Before the age of men was measured in years, before kings carved their names into stone, there was Thor. He was called Thor, the Thunderer, god of storms, strength, and the crashing force of the sky itself. When thunder rolled across the heavens, the people of Midgard didn't hear chaos. They heard protection. They heard Thor riding across the sky in his chariot, the earth trembling beneath him. Among the gods of Asgard, Thor was not the wisest. That title belonged to Odin. He was not the most cunning. That was Loki's gift. Thor's power was simpler, and for that reason more feared. He was the god's shield. Thor stood between the world of men and the endless hostility of the giants. The Jotnar were ancient, relentless, and forever pressing against the boundaries of order. Where Odin schemed and negotiated, Thor answered them with force. His role was not subtlety. It was defense, to strike, to endure, to keep the walls of Midgard standing. Unlike many gods, Thor walked openly among humans. Farmers prayed to him for rain. Travelers called his name during storms. Warriors invoked him before battle, not for victory through cleverness, but through raw strength. Thor was loud, quick to anger, and unyielding, yet he was also dependable. In the myths, when the giants threaten the world, it is almost always Thor who is sent to answer them, not because he was perfect, but because he was necessary. In a cosmos that balanced on the edge of chaos, Thor was the blow that pushed it back. His father was Odin, the All-Father, god of wisdom, war, and prophecy, who sacrificed his eye for knowledge and bound himself to fate itself. But Thor did not inherit Odin's hunger for secrets or his love of riddles. Thor's mother was Jörd, the personification of the earth. In the old poems, she is not a gentle figure. Jörd is ancient, solid, and unyielding, the land itself given form. From her, Thor inherited more than strength. He inherited weight, presence, a connection to the physical world that no other god possessed so completely. This lineage made Thor different from the other Aesir. He was not distant. He was not ethereal. He was grounded, quite literally, in the soil of Midgard. It is no accident that Thor became humanity's protector. His mother was the earth beneath their feet. The myths reflect this bond. Thor eats, drinks, sweats, and rages like a man. He tires, he bleeds, he feels hunger and humiliation. These are not flaws in the stories. They are reminders that Thor stands closer to mortals than any other god of Asgard. Where Odin belongs to prophecy and endings, Thor belongs to the present moment, to storms that must break now, to giants that must be stopped today. He is not a god who waits for fate to unfold. He meets it head-on. Thor's power did not come from strength alone. Like many gods of the north, his might was bound to sacred objects, gifts forged not by gods, but by dwarves, whose craftsmanship shaped the fate of the cosmos. The most famous of these was Mjolnir. According to the myths, the hammer was forged after Loki, in one of his many acts of mischief, cut the golden hair from the head of Sif, Thor's wife. To escape Thor's wrath, Loki descended into Svartalfheim and commissioned the dwarves to create treasures for the gods. Among them was Mjolnir. As the hammer was being forged, Loki interfered, transforming himself into a biting fly and distracting the smith at a critical moment. The result was a flaw. The handle of Mjolnir was made too short, yet this flaw did not weaken the hammer.
Mjolnir became the deadliest weapon in existence. It never missed its target. When thrown, it always returned to Thor's hand. It shattered mountains, crushed giants, and struck with the sound of thunder itself. But even Thor could not wield Mjolnir alone. To lift and use it fully, he required Jerngriper, iron gloves that allowed him to grip the hammer without harm. Around his waist, he wore Meggingjörð, the belt of strength, which doubled his already immense power when fastened. Together, these tools made Thor nearly unstoppable. Thor traveled the worlds in a chariot pulled by two goats, Tangnjostr and Tangrisnir, whose hooves sparked lightning as they ran across the sky. At night, Thor could slaughter the goats for food, so long as their bones remained unbroken. By morning, he would raise his hammer, and the goats would live again. Through these objects, the myths reveal something essential about Thor. Even the strongest god relied on craft, ritual, and balance. Strength alone was not enough. Power required tools, and the wisdom to use them. Thor's life was defined by conflict. Beyond the walls of Asgard lay Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, ancient beings of stone, ice, fire, and chaos. The Jötnar were not mindless monsters. They were old, powerful, and eternal rivals of the gods. And it was Thor who stood against them more than any other. One of the most famous of these battles was against Hrungnir, the mightiest of the stone giants. Hrungnir boasted that he would tear down Asgard and kill the gods. He carried a whetstone for a weapon and had a heart made of stone. When the duel was set, Thor came to meet him, Mjolnir in hand. The weapons flew through the air, hammer and whetstone colliding in mid-flight. The whetstone shattered and fragments fell to earth, becoming stone in the land. Mjolnir struck true, crushing Hrungnir's skull. Yet even in victory, Thor was wounded. A shard of stone lodged itself in his head, where it would remain for the rest of his life, a reminder that even gods pay a price for violence. Not all of Thor's encounters with giants were won by force. In the halls of Utgarda-Loki, Thor was humbled. He was challenged to feats of strength, drinking, and endurance, and failed each one. Only later did he learn the truth. The trials were illusions. The horn he drank from was connected to the sea. The cat he could not lift was the Midgard serpent in disguise. The old woman he wrestled was old age itself. Thor had not been weak. He had nearly accomplished the impossible. Perhaps the most infamous giant tale came when Thrym, king of the frost giants, stole Mjolnir and hid it deep within the earth. Without the hammer, the gods were vulnerable. Thrym demanded the goddess Freya as his bride in exchange. Instead, Thor disguised himself as Freya. Veiled and dressed in bridal garments, Thor was brought into the giant's hall. When the hammer was placed upon his lap to bless the wedding, Thor seized it and slaughtered every giant present. These stories reveal the truth of Thor's nature. He was not invincible. He could be tricked. He could be humbled. But when order itself was threatened, Thor answered without hesitation. Thor and Loki travel together often. In the myths, they are companions on long journeys beyond Asgard, sent to confront giants, retrieve lost treasures, or test the boundaries of the world. Though Loki was not Thor's brother by blood, he was bound to Odin by oath, and by fate to Thor. Their partnership was uneasy. Thor relied on strength and direct action. Loki survived through wit, deception, and clever speech. Again and again, Loki's schemes placed the gods in danger, and just as often, Loki was the only one capable of undoing the chaos he caused. Thor understood this, even if he did not trust it. On their travels, Loki served as guide and negotiator. Thor served as threat and executioner. Where Loki spoke, Thor loomed. Where Loki failed, Thor struck. Yet the myths make clear that Thor never fully turned his back on Loki. He tolerated the trickster's lies and humiliations because the balance still held. Loki's mischief, though dangerous, remained within the bounds of the cosmic order. That balance would not last. When Loki's crimes grew darker, when his actions led not merely to embarrassment, but to death and irreversible loss, Thor stood with the other gods against him. After the killing of Balder, Loki was hunted, bound, and punished. Thor was among those who ensured Loki remained chained. When Ragnarök approached, Loki would return as an enemy, and Thor would not hesitate to face him, just as he had faced giants, monsters, and fate itself. Among all the monsters born into the Norse cosmos, none was more closely bound to Thor's fate than Jörmungandr, the world serpent. Jörmungandr was one of the 3 children of Loki and the giantess Angrboda. When Odin learned of the prophecies surrounding these children, he cast the serpent into the great ocean that encircled Midgard. There, Jörmungandr grew without limit, until his body stretched around the world and his jaws closed upon his own tail. From that moment, Thor and the serpent were destined enemies. Their most famous encounter came during a journey to the realm of the giant Hymir. Disguised and traveling beyond the safety of the gods, Thor went fishing upon the open sea. As bait, he used the head of a great ox. When Thor cast the line, it sank deep, far deeper than any mortal waters. The serpent rose from the depths. Thor hauled Jörmungandr toward the surface, his strength so great that his feet broke through the bottom of the boat and pressed against the ocean floor itself. Thunder rolled as Thor raised Mjolnir, preparing to strike the killing blow, but fate intervened. Fearing the destruction that would follow, Hymir cut the fishing line. The serpent sank back into the depths, and the sea grew calm once more. Thor did not forget. The myths say that from that day forward, the hatred between god and serpent poisoned the oceans and darkened the sky. Their battle had been delayed, but not avoided, for it was foretold that when the end of all things came, Thor and Jörmungandr would meet again, and neither would survive. At the end of all things, the cosmos itself would tremble. This was Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, when fire and ice, giants and gods would clash in a final, unstoppable storm. Thor knew his destiny. The world serpent Jörmungandr would rise once more from the sea, spewing venom that would blacken the sky and boil the oceans. The 2 enemies would meet at Vigrid, the vast battlefield where the forces of chaos and order collided. When Thor struck, he would slay the serpent. Mjolnir would crush its head, and the air would roar with thunder. The earth would shudder beneath their struggle. But fate is relentless. Thor would take 9 steps after delivering the fatal blow, and there, the serpent's poison would find him. His death was not a surprise to the gods. It was foretold. Thor, greatest of warriors, would fall, just as all things must fall, as prophecy decreed. The world would tremble with his passing. Yet even in death, Thor's story does not end entirely in despair. His struggle against Jörmungandr is a testament to the power and courage that defined him. He stood against inevitability itself. He met fate head-on, unyielding and unafraid. Ragnarök was a reckoning, but in Thor's actions, it also became a reminder of duty, strength, and the courage to face what cannot be avoided. Though he fell to Jörmungandr's venom, his sons, Magni and Mothi, survived the cataclysm. Each inherited a fragment of their father's immense strength, carrying the hammer Mjolnir into the new world. The earth itself was reborn from the ashes of the old, and life began anew. The gods who survived, and the children of gods and men, walked the lands once more. And while Thor no longer roamed the skies, his deeds remained.